Well, Chris, thank you for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Thank you, Arlene. It's a pleasure to be here.
Listen, when we were in San Jose, every time we were in a meeting together, a meeting of the sort that we will not mention, that
That group that must not be named.
the he who must be not be named. Every time you would get up to speak and you get called on. In San Jose, we call on people to speak. It's not largely volunteer, which I love, but they don't do that here in Idaho. But every time you got called on to speak, I was like, here we go. Because I knew you were going to get up and say something fucking hilarious, number one.
Thank you. Okay, now I got performance anxiety.
You put that on your sponsor list.
Unfortunately, most of my funny stuff was at 6 a.m. By 7:30, I'm just not that funny.
I know. Okay, so the ODAT meeting that we went to, which is how I named my podcast, met at 6 a.m. every day. Every day. And you went every day.
That's right.
Except for on Sunday. Did you go to the Sunday morning meeting?
No, I didn't. Actually, Sundays, it's interesting you should mention that. Sunday, I went to church, and I felt that was also part of my recovery. And I tried to focus on that, a group of people. I was raised a Southern Baptist, and so Southern Baptists don't even drink, for the most, I mean, wink, wink, nod, nod, we know they do. But I always found it very interesting that I'm the Southern Baptist who also is an alcoholic. And but I enjoyed that group of people too, and they helped me to see issues in another light, and I always appreciated that.
Yeah, I did not know that you grew up Southern Baptist. I spent my high school years going to a Southern Baptist church in Cupertino.
And there you go. Yeah.
We're
very strict, as I always say, we don't even make love standing up unless somebody thinks we're dancing. We don't want anything.
Which is not allowed. Rhythmic movement is not allowed. That's super funny. What I thought we would do, which would be kind of fun, everything I think coming out of you is going to be fun,
Thank you.
Is I'd like to do the lightning rounds. I've been starting with a lightning round question. Do you remember James Lipton?
I sure do.
Oh, thank God.
The late James Lipton.
Yeah, somebody my age who knows who the hell I'm talking about. We just had that conversation.
I remember Password, which also had the lightning round.
I did not know Password had the lightning round. Well, this is a super fun list of questions. I don't know. It's fun for me. But it's always an interesting conversation starter. So do you have a favorite book that helped you in your recovery?
Favorite book in my recovery? Oh,
I know it's like asking someone to pick their favorite child. I know you for a long time.
I'll tell you one that's just recently, I've been going to a literature study meeting, and it's called Our Higher Purpose, I think, or Our Greater Responsibility. And it's a collection of Bill's speeches at convention level. Really wonderful insights. And not only Bill's speeches, but other people whom I've never heard from the program, kind of the forefathers of our movement. And Our Great Responsibility, I think, is the name of the book. And I would
Our Great Responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
I'll look it up for sure. That's really interesting. I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
I wonder why it's not getting, we'll give it a little more love.
There you go.
So there you go. Any other books that you would recommend to somebody who's early in recovery?
Well, it's funny. I also think you should read Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. And I think it's because we hear so much about Bill, and we kind of lose sight of what Bob contributed to this. And I really have come to admire and respect him. Just this calm, grandfatherly voice. Bill was so much about the organization of AA, and Bob, from what I've gleaned from my readings, seemed to be more about the day-to-day meeting in Akron and how to organize a home group and that sort of thing.
Oh, is he the one who came up with the idea of a home group?
Well, the home group started off, as I understand, more in New York with Bill being there. His home group, of course, was the home with Lois and the assorted characters that he brought off the streets.
Can you imagine?
My wife would not be nearly as tolerant as Lois was, and so she's a saint.
Lois had to endure a very drunk husband. And
oh, yeah. Yes. Exactly.
She's like, well, I guess this is better.
Yeah, exactly. But like, for instance, here's the thing I learned about Bob. Bob came up with the phrase, first things first, which we see in our meetings. And, I've always thought that meant first things first as far as, you put your recovery first. And actually it doesn't. It comes from Bob's view that the verse from the scripture where Jesus says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and the righteousness of heaven. And so he used to say, first things first, seek the things of righteousness or goodness or our God first. And I think that's
God
just
first.
a wonderful thing for me. That's what I need to seek first in my life. However I define my higher power or God.
Right. Did you grow up religious?
I did not. I came into the church at about 16. It's interesting, Arlena. I never, not the wild partier that a lot of people come into our group in. I started drinking seriously at about the age of 42.
Oh, wow.
And had I'd say a 10-year spree, and came in late and moved quickly. And still participate in the church. People talk about their frustrations with their higher power. I never really had that. I enjoyed a relationship with God. I understood that I was not the higher power. Although in alcohol, I definitely tried to take the reins.
Yeah. So you didn't grow up religious, but at 16, were you invited
a friend invited me to church, and I came and I went, and I really enjoyed the people I met. I liked the structure. Maybe that's kind of, I always say AA. If you're in that program, AA is very similar to church. It's church with swearing,
and dirty stories.
Is that true?
From what I hear.
We got a guy who speaks up there. We take an offering. We hold hands. We say some prayers. If we ever come up with a hymn for AA, we're set.
All we need is a song.
On with Christian drunks or something, I don't know.
Well, and I think this is where I sort of take issue with some of the things, is that so then people start treating it like a religion.
Yes, absolutely.
Like this way is the only way.
Absolutely.
That kind of mentality makes me uneasy.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's just me.
Well, and I will tell people who maybe have some frustrations about organized religion, and I always say, well, give AA 6 months and you will know every church or synagogue in the community. You will know where the Methodist church is, the Presbyterian, the Lutheran. They may not agree on that's right. They may not agree on a lot of things, but they all agree that the world is better when we're sober. And they open the doors for us. And that's what I like about that.
Can I say amen to that?
Amen to that.
Amen to
That'll
that.
preach.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I have more questions for you, by the way. Do you have, you may have already said this, but do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you live by?
I think with my program, there is a great phrase. After all is said and done, more is usually said than done. And I think that's a reminder to me that I can talk a good game, but what am I really doing? And
after all is said and done?
After all is said and done, usually more is said than done.
Especially at committee meetings.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
Oh my gosh.
I have seen us fight in business meetings about some issue, and we will go back and forth, and then whoever wins, and then never really follows through with it. Yeah.
Nothing ever happens. Yeah. Super fun. I love that quote. I have actually never heard that.
That's a great one. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you.
You bet.
It's amazing. Do you have a regular self-care routine or recovery routine?
I try to get to a meeting every day. And I like to go to the morning meetings. I find that there's an energy. People who are early morning people just have an energy. I will also go to evening meetings, but I find it's just everybody's tired. And so my day starts off better. It's funny, I was a high school teacher, and I would drive all the way down to my morning meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning, get up at 5. And at the end of that meeting, get back in the car and drive way across town to where I taught. And I think I was a better teacher as a result of that. That hour beforehand made me ready to handle the challenges of high school students. Put my head in the game.
What was it about the meetings that made you better prepared for the
I think the laughter and the realization that we all get together and we complain about our frustrations sometimes, and we talk about them and we deal with them at podium level. And you realize I'm not alone in this. All right, I'm going through this frustration just as he's going through a frustration. And then I always say, we talk about let's play the tape out. If you go to the meetings, you get to see the tape played out. How did he resolve that issue at work? How did he resolve that marital issue that was having the problem? How did she handle those kids who were driving her crazy? So the reason I keep coming back is I want to see how this telenovela ends.
Telenovela, spoken like a man married to a Latina.
A Latina.
A Latina, like me. By the way, I love your wife. She is amazing.
She knows. That's so true.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I don't think that I've discussed yet on the podcast is like, we keep showing up because we get to see how things play out. That is so true. And we share from, the venting, the validating, and the connecting and realizing that I'm the same, that we're all the same.
That's right.
And that I'm not the only one. That is a huge component of recovery. And there have been times when somebody shares something and I have to find out, how did that work out for you? How are you doing?
Absolutely.
Like we have stuff to actually follow up on. And it's so fun. Have you found that your small talk has changed since you got sober?
Well, some of my friends always say that, if you work the program long enough, the program begins to work you. And I didn't quite understand that, but I do now. I find that I pause. I don't say something that I'm going to say or offer my opinion or when there's dissension. And I saw a lot of this during the election in the past couple of years, that the world did not need the opinion of Chris Evans on how these things were going to be resolved. And I found that I was taking myself off of social media. It just didn't make me a happy camper.
Yeah.
It made me unsure of my position and unsure of theirs. And I think for the small talk should just be the small talk. How are you doing? How's life going? What do you need? That's pretty good small talk.
What do you need?
Yeah, rather than the, political issues or the moral issues of the day.
Yeah, those are, I noticed that the way I viewed people started to change, but I like the idea that it doesn't really, you know what I heard? I heard a term yesterday called internet fasting. And it's sort of like a play on intermittent fasting.
Yes.
And it was such a great idea because social media for me has become quite toxic.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is a form of brainwashing.
And I have people on all sides of religious issues and moral issues and political issues, economic issues that I've met in the program. And I thought, I don't want to be tainted in how I view them from something that they say in a tweet that is just a tweet.
Yeah. It does change. It does change how you see somebody.
Arlena, I think, I was a high school teacher for 30 years. I dealt with enough high school. Social media in much the same way is just high school added on.
People don't really change.
No, it's all the drama and no significance in life.
Yeah, all the talking and much ado about nothing.
Exactly.
Usually more said than done.
More said than done. That's right.
That's awesome. And are you a prayer meditation kind of guy?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's interesting. I do pray, and my meditation, I try to do that. But I've started with my sponsees, which I normally never did before, to ask them if at the end of our session we can pray. I ask them, tell them whichever higher power, I don't care. Can we just go to something greater than ourselves and thank him for the time that we had together? I got that from the big book, actually in the 12 and 12, and he talks about when we go to our higher power, we go to the fastest, I'm paraphrasing, the fastest way to the higher power, which would be communication through prayer. And I thought, I've been working with these guys and we've never prayed together. And, I pray for their situations with their family. I pray to alleviate them of their fears. I share with them difficulties that I have. And, it's a short little prayer, but at the end, I think there's substance to it. We are inviting the third entity into this group of two drunks talking, a higher power.
Yeah, that's interesting. My sponsor, I like the idea of I like the idea of the prayer at the end, and I've always done the prayer at the beginning to invite. And like you and I prayed before I
Absolutely.
started recording. I like to invite God in, because then it's like, well, whatever happens is what was supposed to happen. What was said is what was, and we do try to be led. And I got this great prayer, take all that I am, all that I hope to be, and use it for a purpose greater than myself.
That is wonderful.
Right. And then at the end, it's like, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like, just ending with gratitude is what a
Mhm.
beautiful practice.
It really is. And I've only had one person who's an atheist, and we just kind of acknowledge that there's something that we're praying to, or that I am praying to, is to help him, and we leave the names out of it.
We leave the
we
name.
we let God maintain His anonymity. And,
That's cute. With somebody who is an atheist, do you focus more on the feelings
this
or
is my first real
principles?
atheist. This gentleman I've had is my first real atheist. I've had a number of people who had problems with organized religion,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of come to grips with that. But this gentleman I'm working with now is an atheist, he says, and there are members in our fellowship who are atheists,
Oh, sure.
and
Yeah.
I've gotten some names for him to talk to them about.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing is I don't have to change my view of my higher power to placate someone who's coming in. I'm just going to work the steps with you.
Yeah.
It is
That's the
not
only
good for me
job.
to. That's right. My job is not to change mine or to create yours.
We'll
And
circle back to talk about sponsorship, because I think that's a
absolutely,
really, how do you find one? Like, what's their purpose? How do you relate? And as a sponsor, I have a whole list of, I have like a lecture, like not a lecture, but I have like a whole list of things I share with somebody. Someone says, "Will you be my sponsor?" And I was like, "Hold up, let me tell you how it's going to
that's
go
right.
down. Sleep on it, and then if you're
Right.
feeling it in your heart, then I'll meet you at your level of intensity."
That's right.
But yeah,
How
we'll
did, how
still.
did you how did you find your first sponsor? If the interviewee can play the interviewer.
Sure. No, listen, I love talking about me. Let's not pretend. No, I found my first sponsor, the very first sponsor. There was a woman. I grew up in Sunnyvale, and I went to the church that I was raised at. I started in a Presbyterian church. That's where my parents went. The Sunnyvale Presbyterian Church, beautiful community, very lovely, lovely people. And someone said, "Oh, there's an AA meeting there," and I was like, "Hot damn!" So I started going. Oh, little play on words there. Didn't realize. Went to the AA meeting there. Oh, I just said, well, it's okay. It's fine. I went there, and there was a woman who was professional. She kind of looked like me, like she was a brunette. And I thought I admired her, and she drove a nice car, and she was sober. And I was like, "Will you sponsor me?" And she said, "No." She turned me down because she said that she hadn't gotten through the steps yet. So that was very sad for me, because they said to look for somebody who has what you want. But I was undeterred. I was so desperate to be sober. I was like, "Oh,
Right.
I'm going to do anything." And then the second lady I picked was younger. And then as I started talking to her, she was just cute and available. And I talked to her, and we had a nice conversation one time. I was like, "I got to get someone to sponsor me. Will you do
Yeah.
it?" And I don't think I asked her that way, and then after we were working together for a short amount of time, I realized that that was not a fit. So then I found Kimmers. And
Ah.
yeah, I love her. And I found her because they kept telling me I needed to work with a woman, and I was hearing all these sort of guidelines, like for someone who has what you want. And I kept hearing about the 4-step, and I kept hearing that people were doing steps 1, 2, and 3 and relapsing, and I was terrified. So I remember walking into a meeting one day, and I saw Kimmers, and she said, "Hey, Arlena." And it was the second time I met her, and she remembered my name.
There you go.
And I was like, "Oh, she's the
And
one." So I
yes.
asked her if she would listen to my inventory, but she said that we were going to start with she would be honored, but we're going to start with step 1. So rude. How did you pick your first one?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a funny story. I've been in this group of people that we meet with. I've been in this program for a while, and I went up to a man named Jim H. and I said, "Jim, how do you find a sponsor? And I'd known Jim from another venue. And he said, Chris, sometimes you just go up to a guy that you see what they have, and sometimes they just come up to you. And I thought, okay. And I thought, well, I'll start looking around. And within 35 seconds later, a man walks up to me and says, I've seen you coming in. Would you like me to be your sponsor? He did not talk to Jim H. He just came up. It's interesting. Here was a man who had been raised in the church. He didn't know what my particular views were or anything like that. But we had that kind of common vernacular that we could talk about. And he was Dave Barry's sponsee, and I was his first sponsee. And so it was kind of very cool. And he was very nervous going through it. I was very nervous going through it. And I still keep the friendship. We still keep in touch. And I thank him every time I talk to him for being willing to walk through this with me. I will tell you, but with this sponsor, he lost his job, almost lost his house. A pipe burst and everything in his house was ruined practically as they fixed it. He and his wife were having to rent out rooms in their house to students just to try to make things meet. This is kind of during an economic downturn. Never once did I see that man take a drink, and he was always there for me. And I thought, wow, this guy is going through the fire, and he's here for me. And I was very appreciative of that.
And do you still call him your sponsor today?
No, I don't. He has since moved. I have another sponsor that I work with, and I love this guy. And we're just, guys will ask me about sponsorship, and they'll say, what is this sponsorship? And I say, well, let's not make this bigger than it is. It's really just two drunks reading a book together. Let's just simplify it.
Yeah.
They're always worried they're going to get the wrong sponsor. We're just going to read a book. And if we simplify it that way, I remind them that it's not a marriage. If you find somebody else, great. Then you keep my number. You call me and let me know how you're doing, and I will call you. We don't establish the connection. We don't cut the connection simply because we're not reading the book together currently. And the last thing I'll say on sponsorship for me, I remember getting to the fourth step with a guy, and I had sponsored about 5 guys who were 1, 2, 3 out. And as I got to the fourth step, I was very nervous because now I had no patter. I didn't know what to do because we'd never gotten that far.
Yeah. It's very common that people do steps 1 through 3 and then relapse.
Adios. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so sad because the 4th step is, for me, like, that's where the magic happens.
That's where the magic happens.
4 and 9 for me. And trying to pick a favorite step is like asking you to pick my favorite child or book, or it's like they were all so helpful to me. But do you have any boundaries or requests, or
there are some sponsors who are very hard, tight disciplinary. I'm just not that way. I'm not, I hope I'm not a marshmallow or anything like that, but I understand sometimes work situations come up, but I'm never going to slam the door. You didn't make it here on time, but I do ask some simple things like, call me. If you can't make it, call me. If this becomes a pattern, then obviously we have the discussion. Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier, and I said, with a lot of the men I work with, the younger men, there's not been a man in their life, and an older man especially, and it's kind of teaching them how this works as far as being a responsible person.
Yeah.
Show up when you say you're going to show up. Do the assignments.
Basic life skills.
Yes, I'm never going to ask them
courtesy.
To push it. Exactly. I'm never going to ask them to push a peanut down the street naked.
Why
as much as I would love to see that.
So funny. Nobody wants to see that. No, that's always super.
How about we just learn how to pick up the phone and say, I'm running a little bit late, I'll be there.
Yeah. Do you request that they attend any Big Book or 12 and 12 meetings?
Well, when I work with a guy, I work with them through the 12 and 12, and then assign the Big Book, as kind of an adjunct reading at home. But we work a step a week. For me personally, I am not one.
Okay.
Yes. I'm not a big believer in, I've been doing my steps for a year. For me, this is, I just think, wow, a year on your steps. Okay. I want to get you through, and I want to get you into the 12th step as quickly as possible after you've done each of the steps. So, but as far as requirements, if you're not going to meetings, then you're not meeting new drunks. And
I know,
that's where we need to be.
Do you ask people to call you a certain amount of days or
No,
a week?
I say text me, call me. I'm more concerned that you meet me when we do our step work.
Right.
Do
you do the whole?
I'll know if they stop coming to the meetings. There's no need for you to call me.
Oh, right. Yeah. They tend not to do that.
Anyway.
Yeah. Now what about like time of day or length of meetings? Do you have guidelines?
I think for me, nowadays I'm retired, so I have a little bit more flexibility. I kind of like this Zoom stuff. I think, this is going to make my sponsorship a lot easier with guys.
Yeah.
I used to also go to coffee shops to meet with them. I think I've stopped that. I started going to an Alano club, which made it a much more focused meeting with sponsors.
Yeah.
We'd get together for coffee, Arlene, and it'd be, 20 minutes, 15 minutes of chit chat before we got to the step. And then people would be walking around and they'd wonder what we're talking about. And it's just, I go to a Alano club and we're in a room and there you go. It puts the pedal to the metal.
I do tend to meet in private because if somebody, especially for inventories and things like that, that they need to feel safe.
Yes.
Like typically people need to feel safe if they're going to be talking about this stuff. So
how long does it take you to go through the 12 steps with somebody?
I don't have a time. I got a lot of rules. Like I wouldn't say rules, but for instance, when somebody asks me to be a sponsor, I'm like, well, this is how I do it. I know some people read the book with their, like Bob's in the program and he reads the book with people. I got that kind of time. I mean, I typically have more than 10 sponsees at any given time. And so I don't really have time. I mean, you can read on your own and then let's talk about it. But like I'll be like, okay, so are you ready to commit? Are you ready to stop drinking? Like I need to know if you're ready.
That's right.
I'm gonna say, are you willing to take direction? I'm gonna ask you to do some things that you're not going to want to do. I'm not gonna ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do, right? So would you be willing to take some direction? And they typically say yes. And then I'm gonna say, I need you to go to at least one big book or 12 and 12 books. Like get in the book. Like the answers are in the books, right? The 12 and 12 and the big book. And then I tell them, over the years, I've recognized that I have limits. Like after about an hour, I lose focus. This is my own I don't know if it's a shortcoming. It's just a limitation. And after about an hour, I start to lose focus. Right. So our meetings are an hour. I'm going to assign you homework and we meet when your homework is done. There's no need for us to meet if you haven't done your homework.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then things like, when I, was working corporate, I would be like, I give them the pain scale and I say, if you're at a 7 or above, text me and I don't care what I'm doing. I will excuse myself from a meeting. I will get right back to you. But if you call me and you're just like, I'm just checking in, I may not call you till tomorrow. So just like, I'm just aware that I have like these limitations. And as long as you're okay with that, then we're good. Then we'll get down. Right. And I will absolutely meet you at your level of intensity. I'm not going to drag anybody through the steps. I'm not going to hound people to meet. You know what I'm saying? I'll meet you at your level of intensity. It's all on you.
Well, I always say there was one guy I met and he said, would you be my sponsor? And I said, sure. And he said, how much do you charge? And I said, what? And he said, well, I had a guy and he said he'd be my sponsor, but his time was valuable. And so I had to pay.
Yikes.
So I made him a good deal. And but I thought, okay, no matter how bad I am, I'm better than that sponsor.
Yeah.
And then I also remember one of the first guys, I picked him up at an SLE. We had a great talk. I felt good. This is great. The next day I called to see how he's doing, and he'd gotten drunk that night and they'd kicked him out.
Oh my goodness.
So it is a delightful reminder sometimes to me. You don't keep anybody sober, Chris.
No.
You
Have you ever
don't?
had that feeling like, what about giving advice?
Yeah. And that's a rookie mistake. Yeah, I've done it and I've stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, Chris, do you think I should stay with her or not? I don't know. I had no idea. Let's continue with the program. Let's talk about the steps. I do not have that advice on that, what job to take. I think this comes from my view of my higher power. You know, um, there are very few bad decisions in life, Arlena. Crack cocaine, bad decision. Um, robbing banks,
Murder,
bad decision. Yeah, exactly.
probably a bad idea.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
Most decisions are just decisions. And, do I take this job or this job? Take either one. That doesn't matter. Do I date this girl or this guy or that guy? I don't know. I don't, but drink or not drink, that one I do know the answer to. And so the rest are just your decisions.
What is the answer to the drink?
Oh, the answer to the drink is we don't drink no matter what. And because that
Not
screws
today.
up that's right. That screws up all the other decisions you need to make.
Yes. Yeah, there's this a concept of the big domino, which is
Yes.
when you make one decision, it sort of solves or makes all the other decisions irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? You solve the big decision, which is should I drink or not? My answer is always not today.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not.
When I
Maybe
look through,
tomorrow, not today. And
that's right.
it's always today.
Yeah. Well, and when I look through the 12 and 12 or the big book, it never says, okay, now here's the decision for the job that you must take, or the relationship that you must have, or whether you move to Idaho or Texas or stay in California. There's nothing in the big book about that.
Right.
It's pretty simple if what it wants you to do. Pray and meditate, admit your faults, clean house, work with others. That's a pretty good, if you can do that, the other decisions will take care of themselves.
Yeah, there's the few things I like to add in. We do to have a tendency to focus on, things that we're doing wrong, because obviously when we first show up, we're all mess. We're a mess. Like a lot of our decision-making process is very skewed. And so, but I think it's so important, especially around inventory stuff, that we acknowledge the good things that we do.
Right.
And because
Absolutely.
what you focus on grows, right? So how do you feel
Right.
about focusing on character assets?
Absolutely. I think that your character assets, if we stay in the program, you want to emulate the other character assets of people in the program.
Yeah.
I have this favorite story of, there's a guy who came in the program, and here he talked about the story about him being in San Quentin, smuggling drugs in. His girlfriend was smuggling drugs in, and they thought he had the drugs inserted, and so they put him in a paper suit. They fed him X-Lax, and he defecated all over himself, and he didn't have the drugs, and it was like, ha ha. Okay, so that's his rock bottom. But then he talks about what happened. This gentleman starts with this story, and by the end of it, I'm thinking, why can't my daughter meet a guy like that? And that is the character assets that I think is amazing about our program.
Yeah.
I tell people, I learned how to be honest from men who were in prison. I learned how to be a good husband by men who walked out on their wives. I learned how to be a father by men who'd abandoned their children. I learned how to be truthful from men who'd lied. And so that's the irony, the paradox of AA for me. If you stick around, you will be amazed where you learn those good character qualities that you have.
Oh, I love that. I was there when he told that story, and then you got up and you were like, we were howling and laughing. We were howling because I remember he was like, so, and he actually had him on the podcast, and I asked him to tell that story, and he reached out to me later and he's like, can you please remove that?
I'm sorry.
I had to take it down. I shouldn't have. I was like, oh man. He's like, I don't think that's the. He's a businessman. He's like, I don't think that's the image I want to portray.
But it is true. It is just that's
Yeah.
That's my heroes in this program.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What is, back to the questions? I want to ask you some more stuff about sponsorship, but what is one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
That I don't keep a guy sober. I think that was, I felt that somehow this guy had been entrusted to me.
Yeah, it feels
And
like a big responsibility, huh?
of course, even the term sponsor,
Mm.
yeah. And, that somehow there was an authority and now a word from our sponsor, that kind of a thing. And I just realized I don't keep a guy sober. I keep me sober when I work with a guy.
Oh, that's
That's,
beautiful.
I tell them right off the bat, this is not, I'm sorry, I'll be nice to you, we'll have fun, but this is really about me staying sober. And
Yeah, and I think that makes them feel a little bit better about you spending your time on
absolutely,
them. Don't you
absolutely.
don't you hear from those people that are like like you're like, call me, and they're like, I don't want to bother you.
Yeah.
What is your response to that?
Well, I say I'm old and I'm retired, and of course I'm calming. You'd be amazed how when you get to a certain age, so long as there's prunes in the refrigerator, I'm happy. It's going to be a good day. So, it's amazing how calm you can be when you're not drinking. There
Yeah,
was
totally.
it was a calamity when I was drinking. It was a daily calamity. And maybe not a calamity, but there was disgust, self-disgust. My wife was disappointed in me. My daughter was frustrated with me. My employer was getting tired of this. And,
Oh, it was affecting your job at
oh yeah,
you
as
teach
I
at a
said, I was a teacher, and I was beginning to say, it's too long to wait till 3 o'clock to drink. And isn't that terrible? You know,
you were teaching high school, I understand.
exactly. And I think, well, there's a
Boys.
passing period and we can just pass that bottle. I knew that if I got busted with alcohol, because I was a union rep, that there were going to be serious consequences. Two things in education today. Obviously, you do not have any inappropriate behavior with a student. And the second thing is you do not use drugs or alcohol at all on campus. And rightly so. And I knew that I was willing to gamble with that because 3 o'clock was just too long to wait.
Did any of your students ever call you out on drinking?
No, actually, but I have seen students of mine in the rooms, and that's very cool.
Yeah.
And I've seen fellow coworkers in the rooms, and I always remind them, they get kind of, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I got a DUI, blah, blah, blah. Please don't let it. And I say, I'm here. There's no problem. I'm not going to betray your anonymity.
Confidence.
Yeah,
That's the funny thing about when people are like, "Oh, I don't want to go to meetings. What if I see somebody I
absolutely.
know?" That's like,
Absolutely.
can we connect the here, let me connect the dots for you.
Exactly. Well, the funny thing is, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and he lives up in Sacramento. He's in the program, and he said, Chris, we'll go to these parties, and there'll be people there, and they've all got kids my age, or our kids, our daughter's age. And he said, they'll offer me drinks, and I'll say, no, 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 no. And they'll say, why? And I'll say, well, I'm an alcoholic. And they kind of have this, and I said, I can imagine they say, don't ever let the kid get in the car with these people. Oh my gosh, he's an alcoholic. And I said, the irony is they're drinking, and it's perfectly all right. The one guy says, I'm an alcoholic and I'm not going to drink, flusters them.
Isn't that ironic?
It
Well,
is.
so here's a little pro tip from people who have had lots of experience going to parties and not drinking is you don't have to drop the A-bomb on
Yes,
somebody. You can just
that's
be
right.
like, I'm driving.
Absolutely.
Nothing. Or one thing I do when I go to an event, the first thing I do is I grab a drink.
Yes.
I have a glass of my go-to is always like a cranberry. When I was working in sales,
Mm-hmm.
technology sales, obviously from Silicon Valley, but I would go to these sales conferences and everybody gets shit-faced. But
Yes, of
I
course.
would always walk around with cranberry and soda with a lime in it because it looks like it has alcohol in it. And then nobody
Yep.
says anything. Nobody asks me any questions, and if somebody orders a drink for me, it's like, and I say what I want, they go, oh, no alcohol. And it's like, well, I've already had two,
Yeah.
I've already drank two or three of these. And they go, oh, whatever.
Well,
Nobody
and
cares.
I knew you were in sales, and I know those sales meetings must be just nonstop. Hit the bar the first.
Oh, can I tell you though? It was I used to have so much fun hanging out with these people. If I didn't know, here was the difference. The first sales meeting I ever went to where everyone was drinking, I didn't know them very well. I was so uncomfortable. and everybody was drinking and I smelled the wine and I'm like, I was so uncomfortable, but I had an exit strategy. I was like, I got the kids, I got the thing. I always had an exit strategy. So I was like, I got the thing, I gotta go. And they just want you there for the meeting, and then they want you to stay and hang out and drink. But if you don't, I got the thing, and it doesn't matter what the thing is. Nobody cares. So I always had an exit strategy. I always had something. But when I went to places where I knew everybody and I was friends with them, and we'd stay out till 4 a.m. We go get breakfast. They were hilarious because not everybody goes to jail that is as a drunk. You know? Like normal people who drink heavily on occasion, they're so fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know they're delightful. On the other side of that coin, I have friends who are maybe a little more conservative bent and who get into drinking, and they'll say, but Chris, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine. Why can't I drink? And I always remind them, the other miracle is when an alcoholic takes water over wine. That's the second big miracle.
I love that one.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Speaking of fun, what do you do for fun? I feel like we're so like, oh, there's no fun anymore. What do you do for fun?
Well, let's see. For fun, my wife has her grandmother's house in Mexico. So I go down to Mexico in this little town, and Mexicans have a very interesting view of drinking. They understand that I don't drink. So why don't you just have a beer?
Okay.
Or they'll say, oh, okay, I know you're an alcoholic. Okay, I got it. Here's a little rum.
Just a little bit.
Thank you. But no. And but they're
abstinence.
Very gracious. Yeah. One day, even one, my wife's cousin went out and bought me non-alcoholic beer, and I don't even do that. And I was so touched that he wanted to make an effort.
That is very sweet. Do you know that that's like one of the big hot topics of people who are in recovery is non-alcoholic
beer?
Yeah, non-alcoholic beer or wine, and you don't do that either?
No, I to me, I don't want to flirt with it, and I only drank not for the taste. I drank for the effect, and that's just As I heard one guy in a program say, non-alcoholic beer is for non-alcoholics.
That's funny. Yeah, I have it on occasion cooked with non-alcoholic wine. But yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. It does feel like it's a slippery slope. And some people really enjoy the taste of beer and wine. And I just didn't enjoy it enough to feel like I felt like it was going to put my sobriety at risk. And I just didn't want to mess around with that.
Yeah, Arlena, there's also a couple things I won't do. When my wife will go to a restaurant, she orders, and I have no problem. Everything, if we have alcohol here at the house for when we have company. If I want to drink, I'm going to drink. There's, you cannot hide it from me or anything like that. It's just, but there are a couple things I won't do. I won't sit at a bar, and my wife sometimes would like to go to a bar and just sit and, have a drink. And no, I won't do that. Nor will I go to the bar to pick up her drink to come back. Those are just two things I won't do. And
yeah, it's good to have boundaries.
Yeah, it is. I don't even feel comfortable anymore walking down the liquor aisle.
I know, I don't either.
Don't you feel like, like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I
do that too. It's like I avoid that aisle, and I don't know if it's out of habit or occasionally I've walked down that aisle for, I don't know why, but occasionally I have, and I just go,
yeah.
I can't be here.
I'm just going to the ice cream section.
Yeah. You know what else I don't do? I don't go to marijuana dispensaries.
Oh, who has to anymore? You just drive down the street and you get a contact high. I don't know how it is in Idaho.
You're in California. That doesn't happen here in Idaho yet.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Especially
who
downtown.
hit that skunk? And
I know. I was such a stoner that even today, I've been sober since 94. And even today, if we go down the road and there's a skunk, I'm like, it smells so good.
Good times.
Good times. I mean, it's so interesting how it's like, if you It's like Pavlov's dogs. You can
Yes.
literally train your brain to have that physical visceral response.
And we live in a condo, and so we're on the 18th floor, and it just always is permeating, even though there's no smoking policy. And I'm always
Really?
thinking, yeah,
Oh,
and
bummer.
why can't people just who engage? Don't you use the edibles, or can't you drink, or the ointment, or the wax, or
Can't you
whatever it is?
drink?
I don't even know what all this stuff is that they have nowadays,
Yeah.
but it's that powerful smoke stuff. And
Yeah. I love that
different
shit.
age, different
But
time. Yeah.
yeah, my husband was telling me that he was on a plane with someone, a colleague, a work colleague who had some sort of wax that was odorless, and he was getting high on the plane.
Oh yeah. So one day out at the high school where I worked, there was a kid in the class, and a teacher told me this story. He said the kid just reeked of pot. So they sent him to the office, and he comes back about 2 minutes later, and he thought, this kid's, he's still, what is going on here? So he calls the front office and he says, I sent him in because he reeks of pot. What? And the disciplinarian says, yeah, we sprayed him with Febreze. Febreze him and sent him back.
That was their solution. And so I did not know that Febreze was like Narcan.
Well, nowadays we hate to lose that average daily attendance. That's how we get our money in education. So we suspend them, we lose the money.
God forbid. Oh, that is hilarious.
Oh.
And what I didn't ask you was, so you said you started drinking when you were 42.
42,
and why 42? What
so
happened that
late,
you
yeah.
started drinking then?
I never really drank, and we mentioned this not too long ago. And maybe some of your listeners might have come to their drinking issues through this. I wasn't really a drinker, and but I love to eat, and I got up to about 370 pounds, almost 400 pounds. I had gastric bypass surgery, and I dropped a ton of weight. And one day, my wife and I were in Vegas for an anniversary, and of all things, I had a Kahlua and cream. I thought, that sounds good, a little light, something there. And I was wasted, because part of the gastric bypass is it circumvents your intestinal tract, and the alcohol goes right into the bloodstream, and you have no hangovers when you drink. So the first couple of times were kind of fun, one drink and, oh, Christmas, and then pass out. And then I started drinking more and more and more. And before I knew it, I'm drinking from 3 till 6 at a bar, sober up a little bit, go home, get 2 bottles of wine, and then all weekend long, just drinking nonstop every day. Mm. I tell this story because my sister also had gone in for gastric bypass 3 days after I did. And she became an alcoholic too. She died of the disease 3 days before retirement. It's funny, we were both teachers. We both had the surgery. We both were going to retire the same year. I went into AA. She didn't. And she died of cirrhosis of the liver 3 days before retirement. Oh, and so I've talked with people who have had gastric bypass surgery, and they have had cross addictions. One woman who I knew, who was just this lovely young lady, became a habitual gambler, taking the money, food money from kids, robbing their piggy banks, going up to Tahoe, coming home within that same day. I talked with a man, good man, nice man, who had an issue with pornography. Talked with a couple of others who became alcoholics. And this is something that they never told us really about. If they did, I didn't listen to it. That the danger of cross-transference of addiction. For me, it was alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever try doing things like OA? What did you try?
I did. And it didn't seem to work. I mean, obviously it didn't work.
It wasn't a fit for you, or you weren't ready? It wasn't a fit
for me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think with OA, it was a health issue, but my wife was not going to kick me out of the house, and I was not going to lose my job. I was just going to have to get a bigger size pants.
Yeah.
But with drinking, my wife was ready to leave me. My job was on the line, and the consequences were scarier for me.
Yeah, that was very scary. What was it what happened that you finally decided to stop drinking, that it was a problem?
I remember the night my wife said, "That's it. I did not sign up to be married to an alcoholic," to which I thought, I didn't sign up to be an alcoholic, but here we are. I don't know how to stop this. Every night at 2:00 in the morning, I wake up and I pray that this will end. At 6:00, I think, okay, I feel good. And by 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm jonesing for booze so much I can't stand it. Lather, rinse, repeat, over and over. When she said, okay, you either get your life together or we get a divorce. And, we talked about playing the tape forward, and I could play the tape and I knew what was going to happen. We were going to divorce. I was going to blow through the money. I was going to lose my job, and I would die of alcoholism. And part of me was happy when she said, let's get a divorce, because I thought, oh, good. I don't have to hide the alcohol anymore. I can go down. I don't have to, I don't have to worry about my breath when I'm near her. I can just drink like I want to drink.
Free to drink.
Yeah. Free to drink. And unfortunately, my sister did not have that. She was a single woman, and there was no governor on that drinking. And she just couldn't stop. I went into her house. Near the end, when we were putting her in hospice. I had not been in her house in 3 years. And Arlena, untreated alcoholism is horrific.
What did her house look like?
Oh, just a pigsty, bottles everywhere, go into the kitchen, old dishes that hadn't been washed. Open the refrigerator, there were fruit flies and bugs and stuff like that. Downstairs bathroom where she had rushed in to go to the bathroom and hadn't made it, just left there. And her clothes were filthy, and just drinking. When she died, I called a friend of ours who cleans houses, and bless her heart, she went in there and took care of it for us. And I drove by, and there were just bags and bags of bottles. And I thought, okay, why couldn't you just put the bottle in the garbage can on your way out the door? But she just...
That's the whole unmanageability, the whole insanity of what happens. And I think that's, a cautionary tale, left unchecked with nobody in your life to be like, hey, this is a problem. Like somebody, like you had somebody that you cared about, who cared about you. You had something invested in something that you were going to lose, and everything to gain. And so I'm so sorry about your sister.
Thank you.
I know how hard that is. And
I'll tell you the real tragedy, Arlena. I brought her to a couple of AA meetings, and she said, it's very depressing. And I thought, depressing? We're laughing, we're joking. As our good friend Anthony says, AA is stand-up tragedy. It's funny, we're laughing at this. And how could you find this depressing? But she did, and she didn't want any part of it.
Yeah, it's an intolerance for negative feelings, which is ironic because, when I was drinking, I would wallow in my misery. There was a Robin Williams movie. I think it was like Moscow on the Hudson. This is going way back.
I know the movie. I know the movie very well.
He said something, Chris, that I have never forgotten. And he was like speaking as, from a Russian person. He was a Russian, and he was talking about, we love our misery. We cherish our misery. And I was like, wow, I totally get that. There was a part of me that loved to wallow in my misery, the self-pity.
Yes.
It's not my fault. I'm a victim. Just the self-pity it's like the shadow work that we do when we get sober. It's like, what is that about? What is that about?
Oh, absolutely. That's the addiction too. The pity does not require responsibility.
Yeah. But the work, the growing pains of recovery is that we're going to feel pain either way. So you might as well just do the work of recovery and have a happy life.
And I tell people on AA, it enhanced every aspect of my life. My relationship with my family, my job, my membership in my church. I'm a better member of this fellowship church because I'm an alcoholic. I think it just enhanced every part of me. That's the beautiful part of this.
Yeah, some people are
I can now say it. I'm a grateful alcoholic. You know?
Yes, yes. And isn't it interesting where it's a place we can go and it's like, service is one of those things in recovery. I know you do lots of service you do a lot of service, and going to these meetings, it's an opportunity. It's like, it has everything there, it's like you can be of service,
Yes,
you can receive service in the form of love and support and all that stuff. It's a place to, it's interesting that we're required to speak the solution.
that's right.
We're
That's right.
we do share our feelings and we process them out loud, and we are required to share the solution. That is not lost on me, that we are required to, and it makes us realize, oh, the answer was within me all along.
Absolutely.
Right.
You ask what I require of my sponsees. I do require them to take about 4 weeks and choose 2 days a week and go and be a greeter. And I show up with them and we greet people, 20 minutes before the meeting. That gets more resistance at first. It's like, oh, okay. And then they love it.
And they love it.
They do. It's like, oh, people, it's so nice to see you. And they get the names.
Yeah.
And I tell them, little is much when God is in it. And that's what this is all about. You don't have to do great things. A little thing with God, and you will be amazed at how it works, or your higher power, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And I love the redefining of the higher power when we first.
Absolutely.
It's nice to have somebody to sort of guide you through that process. That was like, what?
Yes.
I can redefine that. Like, I don't have to, I don't have to stick with the thing that was predefined and shoved down my throat.
Right. Exactly. And I've been amazed at how many of them go back to the faith of their childhood.
I know, right? Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of funny. Boy, you used to complain about that so much, and maybe that's just part of the growing process. As you age, you begin to realize, well, maybe I had a little part in that complaint about that.
Yeah. Or
maybe it was a little bit more about me.
Yeah. Seeing it just a little bit differently. Like, if you take out all the fear, if you take out all the judgment, if you take out what doesn't work for you, what's left? What's left is love and support and magic.
One of my bones of contention when we do the second step is, I tell people, they'll say, well, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. And I say, well, that's a wonderful quote. But I said, those people who are sitting in whatever church, synagogue, mosque, they also consider themselves spiritual.
They're not mutually exclusive, are they?
They want to be better people.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. I grew up in the church, in the Christian church. And, when I first got sober, I was like, all those people were fake. They just smile. They're just fake. Nobody ever talked about the bad stuff. It wasn't like that the bad stuff wasn't happening. No, that really wasn't even true. I'm not really sure why I had such judgment towards those people. But when I took away all the things I didn't like about it, they were just doing the best they could.
The best they could. Absolutely. Yeah.
As
I always say, well, the old thing, I don't want to go to AA because it's a bunch of hypocrites. Well, you join us. There's always room for one more. Just come on in.
There's always, I knew this guy who drove a Corvette that had a bumper sticker that said, I hate hypocrites and people who drive Corvettes. Isn't that silly?
That is a classic. I love
That's funny. Yeah. The kind of guy who would put that on his very nice car. They say you don't, people are like, I'm not going to get a tattoo. You don't put a bumper sticker on a Ferrari. And I was like, well, let's just come on back to earth now.
Yeah, so let me ask you, I don't know if you have tattoos, but I've often thought, a lot of our members do have tattoos. Yes. And I've always said, what would be the AA mantra or saying that you would put on your body? Yeah. What would be the AA tattoo that you would put?
What are some of the responses you've gotten?
Well, for me, it would be God either is or God isn't. I love that line. God is or God isn't.
Do you have any tattoos?
I do not. Are you kidding? I get a diabetes shot and I panic. It's just.
My very first tattoo, Katie's mom gave me my first tattoo. She did permanent makeup. And so she tattooed my eyeliner.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And do you have, not to pry, but do you have other tattoos?
I do. I walked around with this picture for about 3 years. And then it goes it's on my side. It kind of starts out on my hip on the back, and it goes all the way up my side up to my bra line. It's
Doesn't that hurt?
big.
They say that that's the part that really hurts on a tattoo, that
That
part
is
of the
not a
body.
lie. They are not wrong. But it's like lotus blossoms, and I really like the lotus blossom because that represented something beautiful. Like they say in the bottom of the pond where the lotus blossom resides or grows, you know, the bottom of the pond is like this muck. It's like
Right.
this icky, gross stuff, you
Yeah.
know, but that's where the seed is planted, and
Yeah.
out of that comes this beautiful blossom, right? And it has other symbolism, but there's four. So there's a grouping of 4 blossoms, and it's the daddy blossom, the mommy blossom, and the 2 little ones. Because
The
that's,
2 little ones. Of
and then
course, that's your
in
family.
Japanese it says love and family,
Yeah.
which is not a lot of words, but
Yeah.
it was very painful.
I tell the story. I was at a party one time, and the guy had his shirt off, and he had the Serenity Prayer tattooed on his body. And I thought, you know, we have prayer cards. You know, it's not that long a prayer. If you've got some memory issues.
Was it in a place
you know,
that he could see it?
it was along the side, and I thought, okay.
Can you even you can't even read that.
I know, but that's what he had, and I just was okay.
Okay. Yeah, we have
I would
friends.
not.
You and I have friends that have all kinds of tattoos,
Oh, yes.
and I've seen, you know, a mutual friend of ours has stuff here and
Yep.
all over, really.
Yep.
And yeah, I have technically 3, 1 on each eye and the big one.
Yeah. Did Bobby have any tattoos?
He does. When he was 18 years old, he got sober at 18, and he has Bob. He had Bob tattooed on his name with Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, the cartoon. Bob was in Old English. The Calvin and Hobbes. And then a mutual friend of ours, Matt Shama, who is an amazing, he did mine. He's an amazing artist. He does
I know
all kinds
Matt.
of things.
Yeah.
So Bob has like a 3/4 sleeve, but he's going to extend it down to the rest of his arm.
Yeah.
But, you know, teach their own, whatever. That's not my
I'm at an age, I just feel guilty taking my Social Security money to go get a tattoo. It just it loses its power.
Do you know we're going to do? We decided on a family tattoo. Do you want to hear?
Yes, of course.
So we thought it would be funny, and you're only going to be, if you're listening to the podcast, you won't be able to. We're going to, on the inside of the lip, have a tattoo that says "Bite me," and when someone starts complaining or, you know, being a little bitch, as we like to say, we're going to be like, when you stick out it's something you're gonna have to watch the YouTube video for that one. But yeah, that's gonna be our family tattoo, is the "Bite me" tattoo. And it's like a sort of a running joke within our family that when, you know, every once in a while when someone's like complaining and you give them the boo-boo lip.
Of course, absolutely.
Bite
well,
me.
You know, the best one I knew, my daughter had a friend whose mother passed away when she was 13. And this girl has done wonders with her life, but she loved her mother. And she went and her mother had written her a note saying, "I will love you forever." And she had that tattooed in the same script that her mother had written. And every time I see that, I get teary-eyed and I cry. And that's the connection she has to her mother. "I will love you forever." And
love you forever.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Do you know Gina wrote her son, Gina, our mutual friend. I started my podcast after Gina passed away. And she used to say that the path gets narrower, but the view gets better. And
Amen.
And she had written that down somewhere, and her son Christian tattooed it on his arm in the same script as her writing.
Well, you know, and as we get to an age where some of our fellow members pass away, people who have had an impact on our life, I feel the loss. And we just lost a very good friend of ours, you know.
Yes, Jim H. He was amazing.
And
he and I had actually scheduled to do the podcast a couple times, and we just couldn't get it together. And when I heard that he died, I felt so bad.
Oh yeah. You know, I'd known him. I'd been in a book club with him for 35 years. And I'd gone through every part of my life with him. My job, he was a teacher, the book club, having a child, buying a house, getting married, blah, 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 retirement, sobriety. And then to see him go, it was a reminder of my mortality. And I think, all right, I've seen the example of what I want in this mortal life, to be of service of others and to be of use to God. And that's, if I can say I've done that, that's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Well, that seems like a beautiful place to wrap up today. I mean, I could talk to you forever.
Arlena, I just want to say how much I love you, and you have been such an important part of my sobriety. Our listeners, Arlena invited me to join them for breakfast when I first came in. I was so excited that I was going to get to go to breakfast with a bunch of alcoholics, that I've been accepted. And that's just you. You welcome and you embrace everybody. And how blessed I am to be embraced by you and Bobby. Just want you to know that. It's a little mutual admiration society here, folks.
Yes, thank you for making me cry, but I love you dearly. Thank you so much.
I will love you forever, Arlena. And Bobby too.
You're a straight up gangster right now. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Give my love to Maria.
My best to all of you and your family, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your service. You have an amazing day.
Love you. Bye-bye.